Welcome to Section 3, Video 5, Creating the Player Character's Code, Part 5, Shooting. In this video we are going to set up our shooting functionality and prepare our HUD classes. First we are going to create two C++ classes while creating another folder for organization, which will be for UI. In the C++ classes folder, under the public folder, right-click and select New C++ class, scroll down, select HUD as our base class, select Next, and we will name this class Generic HUD. In our path, we will be adding in /UI. This will create a new folder category in the public folder, which will be for our UI. Select Create Class, and the engine will compile the code and create our new folder. Now let's create our other class. In our UI folder, right-click and select New C++ class, select Show All Classes in the top right, and enter User Widget. We will be using the User Widget as this base class. Select Next, and let's name it Widget Gameplay. Select Create Class, and let the engine compile and create this new class for us. Now let's close our Widget Gameplay and Generic HUD classes, and in our player character's header file, under the Protected category, we're going to add in some code. Here we are creating our inherited function that is on all actors called takeDamage, which returns a float value for the amount of damage applied. This will be where our player can take damage. Then we are declaring our onFire function, which will handle all the functionality of firing our gun. And then we declared our variable pointer for an animation asset to play when firing our gun. And then we declared the damage amount of the gun when fired. Let's create our definitions of our takeDamage and onFire implementation, but not the regular onFire functions. Now that you've done so, go into our source file, and at the top in our libraries, we'll be adding in the animation library for our animation asset to play correctly. In our constructor, we are setting the default values for our takeDamage amount and setting our animation variable to null, which is null PTR, or null pointer. Our damage amount will have a default value of 10. Here we are first calling up the chain for our takeDamage, which is our super function, and then checking if our current health is less than or equal to 0, which if it is, then return 0 as the amount of health we have, since that means we are pretty much dead. Then we are checking by subtracting our health and saving it, to use later, which we will use to check if it is nearly equal to 0, or, using this symbol, if it is less than 0, meaning we are dead when it is subtracted, and we are locking our current health to 0, and then calling the onDeath function. If we aren't going to die when we subtract our health, then we just update our current health to the subtracted amount, and then we return the subtracted amount, or 0 in this case. For our onFire implementation, let's start with the beginning of our shoot function by first checking to see if we can shoot. If we can't, then we return out of the function, meaning we don't continue on doing the rest of the code. We just immediately stop here, and that's it. Then we check if we have any ammo, meaning if we have unlimited ammo off, and we don't have ammo, that means we have 0 bullets entirely, and we should not be firing our gun. Then we place brackets so we can organize our code, and then declare a temporary vector variable we have set to a 0 vector, which is a shorthand term for setting it to 0 on the X, Y, and Z. Then we declare our fHitResult hit variable, or struct, which contains almost all the data about an invisible ray that gets fired, and this includes what it hit, what time it hit, the direction of the hit, and so on. Then we have declared two vector variables, one where the invisible ray should start at our camera's location in the world, and then a second is where the ray should end, which is the camera's location in the forward vector, or forward direction of the camera, and at a length of 10,000 units. So, whichever direction the camera is facing, 10,000 units forward is where the ray should end, which it will start at the camera and just shoot all the way to that point. Then we are declaring another struct variable, which will be the objects for the ray to ignore, which we have specified to be our player, with these two lines of code. Then we actually fire the ray within the world to hit anything that blocks the collision channel visibility. In Unreal Engine, invisible ray or raycast is known as a trace, or a shape trace, and in this case it is a line trace. Now that we have fired our ray, we check to see if we hit anything with the blocking hit boolean and the actor that we hit to see if it is valid. If not, then we set the end location of our particles to be at the end trace's location. If we did hit anything, then it's valid. Then we set the particle's end location to be where it hit, which is our impact point, and then we are declaring a general object that handles damaging actors called a uDamageType, and we are creating a generic version of that class, which we later use to specify what type of damage we are using. In this case, it is point damage. Then we are actually damaging the actor that we hit and importing the damage type and who damaged it. After our checks for anything hit or damaging it, we spawn our particles using the function that we created earlier and inputting the particle location, which we have set to be either the end of the trace or to where we hit, which is our impact point. Then we are checking if our fire animation pointer is valid, meaning we actually have something in there and it's not empty, and then getting the animation blueprint instance from our arms mesh and telling it to play the fire animation. And finally, we are checking if unlimited ammo is off. If it is, then we subtract one bullet from our current ammo, which is specified by the ---- after current ammo. Here we are binding our fire button input to the onFire function when pressed, which is in our setup player input component function. Now let's compile, save all, then go to build and rebuild project. Now that it finished rebuilding, let's open up our blueprints and our player character BP. Open up the full blueprint editor, go to viewport, and on our class defaults, select under the gun category, we have the fire animation, which we will set to first person fire montage. Select save and compile, select play, and let's test this. Here we have our gun attached to our arms, and as we move around, it moves with us. When we shoot, it fires our gun. Hit escape to close the game. And in our ammo category, if we turn on unlimited ammo, select save, compile, select play, we can keep firing with no problem. In the next video, we will be creating the player's HUD, part 1, basic setup for UMG widgets.